all in my head. But no, something either was about to happen, or it was about to have to go, public or something like that. And
well, it sounds to me, I'm just an observer in your story here. To me, it sounds like you realized that you both were developing feelings, and she's currently married, so it's not appropriate, and you got out of there. So I would say kudos to you. You were trying to do the right thing.
Yeah, but the other thing, the part about it was that I became I was mad at God for showing me somebody that was the person that I wanted to be with, for the rest of my life, as far as I was concerned, and I couldn't have her, and that was infuriating to me. I became a little bit different of a person, and I don't know, and it sort of became a theme in my life. Basically, I feel like now the way I feel is that true love presented itself to me in a form that had a little glitch to it, the fact that she was married, and I rejected it, and I used the fact that there was that glitch, that imperfection, to walk away from true love, and God is love. So if I walked away from love, didn't I walk away from God? That's really the way I feel today, and looking back, I can see quite a few times, even after that I walked away from love, and to me, that's the greatest sin. Now,
well, your line of reasoning is interesting to me, and I understand what you're saying. But what it makes me think of is, all the years I was an elder and I handled so many of these infidelities and unfaithfulness in marriage. It happened, I don't know, dozens and dozens of times that I had, judicial matters with these publishers. What it underscores to me is that whether you're a witness or whether you're a Presbyterian or whether you're a Baptist, they have just as many dalliances as any other churchgoer, I think. It's just handled through the elders and kept secret and all of that. But she was falling for you, and it would have been an affair or whatnot, but it's just human nature. I guess that's just what happens sometimes.
I remember I came back, when I was leaving Bethel, my parents lent us this really expensive, nice camera the last couple of years. When I say us, I mean myself and my brother Danny, because he was there with me for 3 of my 6 years at Bethel.
Ah, cool to have your brother there.
Yeah, it was. It really was. And when he left, I tell you, I didn't stay there very long after he left. He left to get married in January of '96, and by May I was gone as well. So anyway, but when he left, it just it never felt the same again, and so I had to leave.
So let me ask you this: Did you end up seeing her again? Did you ever contact her, years later, or find out, look her up, or anything like that?
Oh, I was just about to tell you that. My last couple of days there at the farm, I went around taking pictures of all of my friends and everything like that. Anybody can remember. I had a couple of vacation days, right? So I went around to everybody's workplace and took pictures of them. And Sherry, of course, was one of the ones that I wanted to take a picture of. And so I went over to where she was working, and I'm like, "Can you get Butch and I can take a picture of you too?" And it had been a couple more years at that point, and I felt different. I felt okay, and I I took the greatest picture of them as a couple. You know, they both just were posing perfectly, and they had the perfect smiles on their face. And I still have that picture. And it felt good to take their picture as a couple, and me kind of, it was me like acknowledging them as a legitimate couple, right?
Yeah.
They're married, right?
Yeah. But if you look closely, hold on. But if you look closely at the picture, she's winking at you in it.
Oh my God.
No, I'm joking.
She had an awesome wink. Oh my God. And that was her thing. She winked at people. And she winked at me a lot.
Flipping the hair off the shoulder and the wink.
She had an amazing wink. Yeah. Excellent wink.
Okay, so you did this. It was kind of a poetic thing. You took a picture of Sherry and Butch and your last couple days at Bethel. So I'm sure that was bittersweet.
Yeah, that was a little bit. And but I actually, you know, at that time too, I was, I had like a best friend who was a girl who I was kind of in love with by then too. And it was, you know, another case where I would, you know, eventually walk away from love because, you know, I already had it set in my mind that I wanted to leave Bethel. So me and Jessica Menchelle became really, really good friends, and I remember I told her once, and I still mean this to this day, that when I was around her, I felt like I was at home, and you know, especially in the months after my brother left, you know, like I really, you know, kind of got attached to her and relied on her and that kind of thing. But she was a commuter sister, and her interests were in being a Bethelite, or so I thought, and she seemed to tell everybody. And things were happening in the congregation. I was in the Spanish congregation, by the way, for the last 4 years. I was at Bethel, and I felt like they kept on wanting me to do more and more and more and more and more in the congregation, and I got the distinct feeling I was being groomed, and I had that talk with my book study conductor. You know, it wasn't me that initiated the talk, but he's like, well, here's what you need to do to become an elder, and we want to see you do this. You know what I mean? I don't know how common that is, but that's what happened to me. And I don't know. I started to look for a reason to leave. I'm like, oh, okay. I actually should back up a little bit. One thing that happened that changed me, you know, again, a very significant point of change was two things happened. I apparently I had a hernia that I don't know whether I got from lifting. I think I might have gotten it from lifting heavy sacks of mail over my head, because I remember like doing that a few times and feeling something kind of slip, you know, down in my gut. And eventually I started to have a bulge, right? Oh, boy. And went to the doctor, and, you know, they're like, yeah, yes, you have a hernia. It's going to require an operation. I'm like, okay, well, you know, okay, operation it is then. So they actually, right there at the farm, you know, they have a room, a surgery room, you know. So they took me into, you know, and I got the surgery. It was a weird experience because brought back some memory. It was very, very uncomfortable for me to, like, be lying on a table nude, let's say, and people coming in the room looking at me and about to cut into my body. Right? You know, I'm probably the only person in the world that's ever had anxiety about getting a surgery before. So actually the first time I went in for the surgery, I freaked out so much that they had to call it off. And so, you know, they rescheduled it, and they eventually did the surgery and whatnot.
Didn't they just give you some happy pills or something like that to calm you down?
Oh, they did. Yeah, they did. They gave me some good stuff, actually, and that was when I realized that I probably lived with chronic pain for many, many years, and I didn't really know it. Because when I woke up from the surgery, I felt so rested and pain-free, and I'm like, whoa, I've never felt like this before. This is amazing. And they basically just gave me a Valium drip and local and body-wide painkillers. I was like, whoa, and it slowly, though, after the prescription ran out, in the days and weeks to follow, I went back to being in pain and stuff. But as soon as I was, back to work from that surgery, I'm working up on a scaffolding, right? And I had to go down to the ground where we had our setup and all our tools, get a bunch of tools, put them in this 5-gallon bucket, and I'm supposed to bring it back up. And I didn't want to have to go all the way around to where they have the pulley to get the tools up. I thought, well, there's a ladder at the end of each, scaffolding. So I decided I'm going to just go up the ladder with one arm and carrying the bucket, which I've done a million times. I just, I get up about 6 feet or so, and I go to the next rung of the ladder. I was going a little bit fast, and I didn't quite get it. And so I go backwards, falling off of the scaffolding, and I fall, like the corner of a little brick wall that was right there went right into my very lower back.
Oh, my.
And so I'm, hurt, I've fallen, and, of course, all the bucket full of tools and stuff like that makes a loud sound, and everybody looks, and I'm sprawled out on the ground, and, so they go in and they look at me. They don't, it's funny, they didn't really do that much. They didn't really try to find out how hurt I was, because I was so embarrassed about it, first of all, and I was under a lot of pressure. I don't know, I concealed just how bad it was, let's put it that way. I really actually injured my back for a lifetime when that happened, but I just tried to kind of pull off, ignoring, the pain. They gave me a little bit of therapy for a few weeks, and then I was back to work. I was back to work within 2 days, actually.
Yeah, no, I can vouch for that. At Bethel, if you miss very many days of work, they will start pressuring you big time. And if you miss it very many after that, then they start talking about sending you home.
Oh yeah, I got that talk once. I actually I got a talk from my overseer once that if you miss any more days of this month, we're gonna have to recommend that you leave. So I actually made it my goal after that. I was in the factory when they gave me that talk. I just had too many sick days, basically. Yeah,
it's all about productivity with the new boys. They want to squeeze every drop out of you.
Yeah, I ended up going a year without missing a day after that. But anyway, but the thought occurred to me when I had the accident that it just made me think of all the things. What if I was really injured badly and I just couldn't do the things that I love anymore or want to do in the future? And wait, hey, what do I want to do in the future anyway? What am I doing here? It's been 5 years now, and I'm 27, and I'm injured. What if I had cut off fingers? I would never be able to play the guitar again. And I was like, well, God didn't protect me from losing or getting something and getting injured, and it was just another case where I felt that God didn't quite, give me what I wanted, I guess, or He didn't protect me from something negative happening. And if He allows me to fall off a scaffolding, what else is He going to allow to happen? that kind of thinking actually made me fear being there again and working there. And I'm like, I could lose everything here, and they're going to send me home, and I knew that there's no follow-through when they send you home, Doesn't matter why you get sent home, you're on your own over there, and they're not going to help you. They're not going to do anything for you. And that fear was in me, and it's almost like, I need to leave here while I'm still in one piece. Because, people, I'd known about people dying and people getting severely injured, even worse than me there, too, at Bethel. And, they just kind of disappeared, and you never saw them again.
No,
Nobody talked about them anymore.
I saw the exact same thing happen more than once. And my roommate, he stayed a lot longer than I did. I left after 2.5 years. I got married. He stayed similar to you. He stayed there for like 6 or 7 years, and he started getting bone spurs on his feet because he had to walk like a mile just to get to the subway to catch it to go to his Kingdom Hall, and he was doing all that. He was wearing his body out. And he would have been more like around 30 at this point. And he actually told me, and he's still asleep in the movement. He's still an asleep JW. But he even told me, he said something almost like what you just said. He goes, I was just tearing my body up, and I thought to myself, I can't do this forever, and I don't know if I can stay here forever. I mean, they're using me up like an eraser, and it was messing his body up. And then he got called into the overseer about missing some days of work, and he'd been there, working his butt off at that point, like 7 or 8 years, and it really bugged him that he got reamed out about missing a few days of work.
Yeah, there was always, something to get reamed out for, too, is the thing. And, I never got any kind of serious discipline there, but, for falling off the scaffolding, I got the 2 elders, and this is, an official, on your record kind of thing because I technically broke the rule of not, using the pulley to get the tools up there, whatever, So, but yeah, I can remember so many meetings about this and that I've done wrong. I had done wrong, and I have no recollection of any kind of praise. I mean, being on the crew that did 1,000,004 in one day, or anything like that. I mean, just the occasional, a compliment from like a fellow worker that's like on your level, perhaps. And there was a moment, the last couple of years in the factory that they were moving me up a little bit, giving me the captain of the machine type, roles and stuff like that. And that was after I made a conscious choice after I had been there about a year to just be the best yes man I could possibly be. I literally, even in those terms, I said to myself, I just really, really need to be a yes man. Because I had, seen so many people, that, if they had any kind of complaints or anything at all, or were independent in any way, independent thinking, they stayed on the same level of the machine. And the motivation to move up is, you don't have to necessarily want some kind of ego thing for yourself, but you get better jobs when you're up higher. And that's a motivation right there, because the jobs at the bottom are just so labor intensive, especially in the factory, that you really want to move up if at all possible. And so you don't have to stay in those jobs. So, but yeah, actually it was when my brother got there, when I was there about 2 years, and I saw him, start starting out and trying his best and stuff like that. And I thought, well, maybe this is, a good time for me to try for those higher positions. And I knew that the change that I had to make was that I had to be just more agreeable, period, to everybody. And it took some stuffing. I had to do a lot of stuffing, like that incident with, me writing my opinion, that kind of thing can't happen again, I had to just really, and I would see things that would happen and I would disagree with or whatever. And sometimes the craziest people would get moved up. I mean, just really when you thought, just when you thought you had a grasp on what it takes to move up to the higher positions and get appointed, then you'd see this asshole who has a bad attitude move up higher than you. And you're like, what? What? It doesn't seem to be any consistency to it. It seems almost haphazard on some level. I could verify that the yes men, percentage-wise, most often get moved up, but then there's those outlying people that are just weirdos, and they catch the interest of some higher up, and then they get moved up.
Mm-hmm.
Like one person I could think of that stands out more than anybody, who is also still there at Bethel, by the way, and still in the mailing department as far as I know. But his name is Matt Ullman, and he was like, a badass, in terms of like, we called it sacking out when we were stacking the mail sacks, right? So when we were sacking out together, it sounds weird to say that, but we're sacking out together, and, he cursed and swore and told dirty jokes all the time. He was extremely hilarious. He's one of the funniest people I ever met. And just broke rules brazenly, had a collection of evil music, beautiful evil music. I don't know, he was just so filthy, he's just like had this naughty, dirty mouth on him, and somehow he really became the kind of like the little buddy of this guy named Phil Perez.
The little buddy. Sounds like Gilligan and Skipper.
Yeah, okay, that's a great example right there, yeah. So, I can't think of the first name of this guy, but his last name was Perez, but he was the subscription mailing overseer, basically. And he had Matt Ullman moved up into, some higher position that was over all of subscription mailing, too.
Well, because he was his little buddy.
Yeah, it really seemed like that.
Oh,
and,
no, it didn't. It wasn't. It didn't just seem like that. It was like that because I can vouch because it was the same way in Brooklyn. This goofball guy that I knew, he was a waiter. He gets dumped into, you get a roommate. You don't get to pick your roommate, at least at first. He gets roomed with a guy that happens to work in photography. Well, guess what? All of a sudden, this dingleberry is in like 2 magazines and in the Young People Ass book when it comes out. And the only reason is because his roomie worked in photography. So it was like, geez, the Holy Spirit really directed that photo shoot.
Yeah, the whole thing was a setup from God, clearly from the beginning.
Yeah, clearly. Okay, I'm sorry to interrupt you. So go on. So you saw these things happening. I will tell you, we're veering kind of here and there and everywhere, but your back is bothering you. You're getting to the point where you're questioning things, and then keep going.
And I was kind of I guess I was just feeling burned out and used,
Because you were.
And underappreciated and not noticed. And I remember one day I walked into the dining room and there's, 1,500 people there. And and I just stop right in my tracks, and I just felt so lonely in the middle of 1,500 people. And I just turned around and I went up to my room and just listened to some music instead of eating that day. And I'm like, this is just, I didn't know what I wanted to do or where I wanted to go. I knew I was tired and worn out and burned out. I knew that there was just little dreams here and there that I wanted to pursue. I had it in my brain I wanted to go to college. That was
yay, college.
Yeah, I always did want to go to college from the time I was a child, a very small child. So I thought, I could leave and I go to college. And I started talking about it, too. I started talking about leaving and talking about going to college. And people, I'll never forget this one guy named Andrew Shaw. I've known him for 5 years. He worked in the press room and I was in mailing, so we would all, we'd hang out by the stacks of magazines and stuff like that and talk. And I mentioned to him that I was, probably going to be leaving soon. And he's like, well, why? What are you doing? I'm like, oh, I'm just thinking about going to college and, maybe becoming a teacher, which I did do, by the way.
Hello. And, that's like a fart in an elevator when you say that at Bethel.
Yeah. And I remember I had paused to try to shift. I think I was carrying a bag of laundry or something like that. And he just goes, shakes his head and takes off, really puts the pedal to the metal. And he just basically turns his back on me. And I was headed towards the basement door of the E building at the time, and he had to know that I had this big laundry bag and I would probably need a hand with the door, but he took off in front of me, and by the time I get to the steps, the door is closed already. And I'm like, and I started seeing that kind of reaction to people when I would talk about leaving. They acted as if I was talking about leaving the truth. And it really, really occurred to me that I had to have a much better reason for leaving than going to college.
Oh, no, it's not. Listen, it's not called a reason. It's called a cover story. You got to have a cover story.
Right. So what ended up happening was my brother David, who lived in Washington State, he lived on Orcas Island in Washington, right?
Oh, beautiful.
And he had a business. Yeah, he had a business pressure washing the mold off of people's roofs.
I've been to that island. It's misty and moisture 24 hours a day, 365 a year.
Yeah, a lot of snails there too. But so he, not the brightest guy, I'll mention. Those yellow plastic ropes that you buy at the hardware store? They're made of plastic. They're not actual ropes.
Yeah, it's like woven nylon or whatever, yeah.
Exactly. They're made by DuPont or something. And so his idea of a safety harness was to just tie that kind of rope around his waist and then go about his business, right? He's on a 2-story roof.
Whoa.
Doing this. And he slips and he falls, and of course the rope didn't even slow his fall a teeny bit. He went straight to the ground, fell on his arm, and his arm was really, they thought it was going to be like a gimp arm for the longest time, but it did eventually get a lot better with a lot of surgeries and stuff like that. So this happens in like May of 2006, and we just have this conversation on the phone, me and my brother David, and I'm like, I could come out there and help you with. He also did window washing and typical witness stuff, right? And I'm like, why you can't work? You need money. You have this business that's dying now. No insurance, of course. And why don't I come out and live with you and do your business for you until you get better. So that's what I ended up doing. There's also my brother's wedding, and I also went to an international convention in Prague right before that too. Well, that must have been afterwards. Anyway, but that was sandwiched in there as well. So I was busy that summer. So I put in my 30-day notice and said I have family that needs my assistance, and I need to leave for that reason. And the brothers, wrote me back this letter like the next day. Oh, well, we read your letter, and we came in the Bethel mail, right? I couldn't believe how quickly they answered the letter.
Yeah.
And they're like, we accept we best wishes to you, blah, blah, blah. See you later. And that was it. And then I'm leaving Bethel suddenly, and I didn't really have plans. Of course, no savings. I had a car that I sold really quickly for like $700, and so that $700 was my fortune that I had to live off of, until I got going, and which I'm still trying to get going. I feel like I don't even. I mean, I've had some productive years since I left Bethel, but I also had this feeling when I left Bethel that I was leaving the truth in a way, because I had some serious doubts about a number of things. My doubts were not even so much about the organization. Here was one of my major doubts, right? All right, the Bible is supposed to be 100% true and infallible, right?
Yeah.
Well, look at the book of Job and the Psalms, but especially the book of Job. The book of Job is mostly written in verse. How could it possibly represent exactly what Job was saying if it's in a poem?
Or how about this? One of Job's false friends comes over and he talks for like an entire day nonstop.
In poetry.
Yeah.
And it all happens to work out in poetry.
No, it's amazing because when I had to read the whole Bible in a year, the first year you're at Bethel, you were required to read the Bible. Remember that?
Oh yeah.
So I remember reading the book of Job one night, laying in my bed, and I turned to my roommate and I said, and since we're naming names, I'm going to name Brian Kearns. I turned to Brian and I said, Brian, does anybody really talk like this for like an entire day? Is that even possible? And he just shrugs his shoulders,
Yeah.
So go on.
Yeah. So implausible. Implausible is the word I like to use for that. It's highly implausible. Okay.
Well, actually, I did research on it. Here's what I heard or read and figured or gathered was that the book of Job is a collection of proverbs or fables based on like Assyrian stories, kind of like an Aesop's fables kind of story. And
yes.
Bible critics know that the book of Job is not to be taken literally, but the masses generally assume, and of course JWs are really fundamentalists at heart. It's a fundamentalist Christian sect. They take it, word for word as that's exactly what they said, and that's exactly what Job said. But it's universally or pretty much well accepted that it was a collection of this, this fanciful story, and it's still a good story, and it teaches us lessons, but it was just a story. So you notice that intuitively.
Yeah. And of course, the book of Job also is much, much older than the Bible itself and is not of Semitic origin at all. So you know that it's just a copy from probably a Sumerian story.
Yeah, Sumerian is what I was thinking of. Yeah, because he was one of the Orientals, as it said in the old New World Translation.
Yeah, and there's quite a number of other Bible things that I can't even tell you when these things crept into my consciousness. I still don't know, and I identify myself as a Christian today. I'm a born-again Christian since 2010, but still, come on. The Bible, it has about the value to me of a Harry Potter or a Twilight series. That's where I would put it.
Well, okay, now look, I'm going to disagree with you a little bit, but only in a respectful manner.
The order is rapidly fading, for the times they are a-changing.